episode of Prophecy for the Last Hour. My name is Elizabeth McGee, and I'm your host. And again, I'm surrounded by all my books and texts. I have a lot of meat to dispense tonight, but I want to just explain a little bit here. I have what I have because tomorrow night I'm really excited because I'm going to start taking Hebrew lessons. I wanted a long time. I found one of the synagogues in our area. So I'm going to be actually to learn Hebrew because the deeper I go, I really want to be able to check right in the original. A lot of the translations or the things I think I'm seeing, compare, and gotta learn the language. If I could have done it over, I think right out, I would have gone to college and been a Hebrew scholar, a linguist. I would have started on this stuff 40 years ago, but it wasn't the Lord's plan, obviously. So we can't look back. We just have to keep going forward. What I wanted to talk about tonight is something that I have been seeing. Now, and I'm not talking about seeing words on a page. Yes, I see this, I see the words, but there's the deeper meaning, the sort of the seer understanding that there's just something there that's just a little deeper, a little below the surface. One of the things that I love about the word is it's so multidimensional. And why wouldn't our Yahweh be able to keep multiple balls in the air at the same time? I mean, there are just so many vibrations, so many levels of meaning that are being fulfilled, that are being activated, that are going on around us all at the same time. And the Hebraic scholars had a system of study for this because they saw this too. This is nothing new under the sun. And they called it, and I've mentioned this in some of my other videos, but I want to go back to this today, is Pardes. It's a type of biblical study. And the ancients acknowledged that this is in the Word. This is how they would approach things. But the first level, I just want to go through the 4 levels again. And in the Hebrew, there are no vowels. There originally were no vowels. They had put the vowels in about 180 years ago, whatever. And so now the word is P-A-R-D-E-S, but it's an acronym. It's a shortened for the words, the P, the Peshat, which is the first level meaning, an R, which is a Remez, the third level, which is a Drash, rhymes with Midrash, which you get a lot of the Midrashes, and Sud, which rhymes with wood, Sud, the Sud, which is the more hidden, mystical meaning. So I wanted to just go through these again. So, but the word with what it means also, that's an acronym, it means garden and it means orchard. Even in the word, there's like this whole, the word is loaded with kind of a mystical understanding. But the first level of meaning that, the rabbi says is there, everybody can see it, is the Peshat, which is the simple, literal reading. We don't have to get too carried away. It says a verse cannot depart from its plain meaning. So if Jesus walked into Jerusalem on a donkey, that's what he did. We don't expect that it was a camel or anything else. So they would say he rode into on the Sunday before Passover, Hosanna to the King, Hosanna to David, to the King of David, on a donkey. And there were scriptures for that, and it was very clear. That would be the Peshat understanding or reading of it. The next one, and this is what I had been seeing. I started seeing this. So I'm really glad I found this because it made me think, I'm not really crazy. There is something going on here. Is the remez, there's a hint. It means this verse implies that there's something alluded to in the text, something a little deeper that's not really totally spelled out, and there's a deeper meaning. So the Ramaz, I kept seeing what I would call these hints. I'm like, God, there's something here. I don't know what's going on here. And I keep digging and looking up words and checking them with the Hebrew and reading other translations and trying to get to the bottom of things. Then you go to what is called the Drash, which rhymes with Midrash. This is a lot of where people are, like a lot of preachers. It's expository preaching. It's taking the moral precepts, some of the understandings, how to live your life, which is great because you have to keep Torah, how to do Torah. Okay, now I've been starting to preach on Torah. We are not exempt from Torah in terms of what that really means. We are not freed from the law, when you understand from a Hebraic understanding what's being said. A lot of these verses have been distorted totally out of context. So the midrash, the darash, that's a very common. But the last one here, which is when I saw the hint, and I said, I'm seeing a hint, the remez, to something really deep. And I'm like, then understanding Daniel and understanding about the sealing and understanding that he said, seal up the words of the prophets, and that there would become, in the last days, this unsealing of knowledge. And I started thinking, there is knowledge. There is something really hitting deep. And then the whole idea of Jesus and the keys of the kingdom that got stolen so that people couldn't understand. So this sud meaning is exactly that. It is a hidden, secret, or mystical meaning of a text. Now, I was listening to someone, too, and they... a Nazarene, I should call him a messianic person, talking about Revelation. Now, if you notice, I've never taught out of the book of Revelation. I almost never quote out of Revelation. I never even, to me, I've always known. I said, this is the most highly apocryphal. Apocryphal is actually another word you could use for sud. It's very hidden. Oh my gosh, it's so funny. I listen to people who are just talking about Revelation, and I'm like, you have no clue. This guy said, and it's really true, there are over 72 secret sod meanings and wordings parable in Revelation. And I am not even ready to begin to go there. I'm just trying to figure out the Old Testament. I mean, I'm still in the Old Testament trying, because you will never understand the New Testament, or especially the book of Revelation, if you don't understand the Old Testament. So that all being said, I thought that was really neat when he said that there were over 72 different sud interpretations. So now that being said, that's my jumping off. So let me start with this one thing I started to see over and over. With these groupings of words, see, there's no accident. So when words are kind of always grouped, closely aligned together in a thematic way, there's something going on. So you would always see the Adamic man or Adam or something always being linked up with the beasts of the field, the cattle, the creeping things, the fish. And I'm like, what are these things? And when I really started to look deeper, and then when I was really starting to read, my best Christmas present ever, and I highly recommend this book. I recommend it, the Apocrypha. It's a great new edition that's come out. It's got Jasher, Enoch, Jubilees, and all of the Deuterocanonical books. Okay, so it's a great reference in one. You can have it all at your fingertips. And I started to read in there, and that gives you so much information. Then I knew there was something really going on with these groupings of words together. So I have folders at home, stacks of them, and I've taken out. And now I think I'm ready to begin to delve into what could be some sud understandings of these words and what they represent. So let's just read two New Testament verses to set the stage. Because from now on, I really want to start breaking this down and teaching my understanding, because it really has unbelievable import for today, the last days, during the time of the restoration of all things. And I've also been really burdened with, Lord, how do you preach the gospel to this generation, especially the generation? It's like it goes right over them. Our words have lost so much salt to them. It's so hard to find words that will penetrate deeply and catch these up-and-coming generations in ways that will light revival fires. Now, that's my opinion, but it's based on experience. So in Acts chapter 10, so now I'm thinking, if this is true, and I'm not the only one seeing it, people all over are seeing this, and pieces of this puzzle are coming together, then I have a verse that I've always wondered about, where it says in the last days that the gospel of the kingdom, again, specific word, Jesus, the gospel of the kingdom will be preached in all the earth, and then come at the end, which is just sort of in keeping with and then come at the end, boom. Because I've been saying this all along. The end is sudden, it's quick, it's like, it's a wrap up, that's it. There's no more time. So, this verse in Acts 10:9, Peter, this is the famous verse where Peter is up on a housetop and he has been praying and seeking Yahweh, and he gets a vision. And this is the vision. It says, Peter went up on the housetop about the 6th hour to pray. He became hungry and was desiring to eat. But while they were making preparations, he fell into a trance. I have looked that word up. I forgot to look it up just before I came, so I can't remember. And it is so I won't really make more comment on that. And he saw the sky open. Now, this is his vision. This is what he's seeing, a trance. And people say, this is like, all right, I will remember now, an open heaven vision. It's where all of a sudden, it's like you're looking, all of a sudden, like somebody turns the TV on, and you just see this whole literal vision in front of you, okay? It's very, people have, it's very full of detail. It's very vivid. It's very real. You're not in a dreaming state, and you're not asleep. It's not a dream. It's very different from a dream. It is an open heaven vision where all of a sudden God just pulls back the veil, boom, and he shows you something. So what he sees, he saw the sky opened, and an object like a great sheet coming down, lowered by 4 corners to the ground. Now, terrible translation, terrible, terrible, terrible. But let me read the whole thing before I go back and pull it apart. And there were in it all kinds of 4-footed animals, crawling creatures of the earth, and birds of the air. And a voice came to him, "Get up, Peter, kill and eat." But Peter went on and kind of argued with the Lord and said, hey, Lord, I've never eaten anything unclean before, okay? And he argued, and the Lord says, and I think this happened 3 times, and don't say that anything I have made clean is unclean. This is huge. This is the beginning now of the time of the Gentiles, the gospel, the good news, whatever Jesus accomplished on the cross, man, this thing now, from this point on, is going to go like rocket fuel across the whole earth. And believe me, it did. There was no place in the whole planet that did not hear, within the first 40 years of the early church, this gospel, this understanding. So we really need to know what he was talking about, because I'll tell you right now, people, this is a pseudo understanding. He's not talking about, he's not showing them, kill and eat animals, 4-footed beasts, crawling creatures, and birds. In the King James, it just has a little bit of a different, they break the words down a little bit better. It's the 4-footed beasts, because I want you to see this. So you have the 4-footed, which is usually translated, I'll give you the words in Greek and Hebrew in a minute, which is usually translated the cattle. Okay, cattle. The wild beasts, and then the wild beasts of the field, the creeping things, birds, and man. Now, if you count it up, there's 5 categories. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay? Now, let me just keep reading you a couple of other places where it's constantly used, this grouping of words. So I set the stage. Excuse me. Now, this is from the book of Jubilees, which I've just had the pleasure of reading again. And honestly, there's just too much meat in here. I just to say it again, people, read. You need to read these books. Read for understanding. Now, on that day, this is Jubilees, chapter 3, in verse 8, in verse 28. It says, "And on that day was closed the mouth of all beasts, of cattle, of birds, and whatever walks, and whatever moves, so that they could no longer speak, for they had all spoken with one language and with one tongue." Now, this context of this, which is so interesting, again, is after and Adam, and he gave. Let me see. I don't think this is in the. This is when Adam is being put out of the garden. Okay, so these things are in the garden. All of a sudden, and in the next verse, 29 says, "And he sent out of the Garden of Eden all flesh that was in the Garden of Eden. And all flesh was scattered according to its kinds and according to its types unto the places which had been created for them. And to Adam alone did he give the wherewithal to cover his shame of all the beasts and the cattle." Now again, what's he talking about? you look at this deeply, we're not talking about, barnyard animals and things, okay? We're not talking about little insects. These words, this is how the prophets encrypt it, okay? Because there is a plain meaning. But when you read this, this is being used in a much deeper level than the plain meaning. So here we have, again, I want you to see. Now let me go to another, this is from a Dead Sea Scrolls fragment. So it's like all over. And we found it in the New Testament. I'll read it to you in the Old Testament. I've got it in the book of Joshua here. Now I'm going to read to you from a Dead Sea Scrolls. And then them, and they shall bless your holy name with blessings. And they shall bless you, all creatures of flesh in unison, whom you have created, you Yahweh have created, birds, beasts, and birds, and reptiles, and the fish of the seas. The first time we're seeing fish here, by the way. I just want to put that. And all. You have created them all anew. The Holy Spirit has settled upon his Messiah. So here again, and you have this pairing of flesh. And in this pairing with flesh, you've got beasts, cattle, birds, rims, which is the creeping things. So, okay, so we're making this point. We've got flesh in these categories of created things, all in the same verses. So that was in a Dead Sea Scrolls. This is from the book of Enoch in chapter 7. Oh, this is just a great, if I say people read Enoch, I know it gets pretty crazy later on because it's so apocryphal, it's so loaded with pseudo understandings, but at least read up to chapter 14. Because that will give you the whole Watcher incursion. It'll give you all the information that you need today to really make sense of, as it was in the days of Noah, so shall it be again. So you really need to read that. Now this is chapter 7 from the book of Enoch. And they took unto themselves, and again, this is where he's talking about what we would have in Genesis 6, which is the incursion, what they call the Watcher angels, the Benai They Elohim, the sons of God that came down, left their habitation, and somehow cohabitated with the daughters of men and produced a race of giants, of Nephilim, of great ones on the earth, okay? So they took unto themselves wives. Each one chose for himself one, and they began to go into them and mixed with them, and taught them charms and conjugations, and made them acquainted with the cutting of roots and woods. There's so much. And they became pregnant and brought forth great giants, whose stature was 3,000 ells. These devoured all the acquisitions of mankind, till men were unable to sustain themselves. Oh my gosh, I can't preach forever on what's in these words, but we won't. And the giants turned themselves against mankind in order to devour them. And they began to sin against the birds and the beasts, and against the creeping things and the fish, and devoured their flesh amongst themselves, and drank the blood thereof. Then the earth complained of these unjust ones. Again, see the comparing of flesh with all of these different groupings. And then what happened in Enoch, I mean, it was just out of control. This is why the flood, the whole creation, these re-engineered the whole thing in complete evil and depravity. It's just a crazy story. So I just wanted you to have that much right there. And there is, again, let me just see, I think this is from the Legend of the Jews. No, we'll come back to that. Now let's go here to, this is again in Enoch. I just want to read that. This is in the commentary, okay? If you do read Enoch, I want to say this. I should someday give a whole little bibliography, but most people read R.H. Charles, the book of Enoch, which is a great translation. But there's another one out there, which actually I like much better. It's by this scholar. Oh, don't leave me, mine. Shode. S-H-O-D-D-E. Okay, and I can't remember his first names. He was a scholar. He studied Hebrew in Germany and a lot of texts and everything, got a great education, came back here. He started a university, or he was part of the start of a group out, a university out in Ohio, and he translated a lot of these texts too. He did an amazing job of translating Enoch, but his commentary, his notes, will help you go miles in understanding Enoch, okay? I don't know why people don't promote that one more. Maybe they don't know about it, but it's SHODDE. Just Google this stuff. You can find it. And this is the one I read and read his commentaries. But he makes this commentary that says, in addition to internal sinfulness, Israel forgot that it was the people of God and sinned by mixing themselves. Because this is where I'm going to go. With wild beasts of the field, with the nations of the world, became the Gentiles and the cattle and the Gentiles. See, these are words that represent, and this is why a lot of people have read into the Zohar and other these Talmudic texts, and they come down really hard sometimes, and there's some kind of bizarre quotes. But so you have to understand what's going on. The mingling, you know, the commandment over and over in Genesis, and I've done some YouTubes on this, beginning to unpack Genesis, the 6 days of creation, because this is when all these things got created. On the 5th day, all right, I'll go into that. On the 5th day, God made the fish and the birds, okay? And then on the 6th day, he made some more birds, and he made the creeping things, the beasts, the cattle, and the Adam. These are, and I've worked those words in there, and I've also worked the words when it talks about these are the genealogies of the records. These are races of flesh. Now, this is when we're going to get into, now we're going to go right where you're just like, what she said. Let's go to Paul, okay? Apostle Paul had this comment to make when he says in 1 Corinthians 15, so as an aside, I'm going to say I'm getting ready to take Hebrew lessons, and so tonight before me, and it's so hard to do this, I have a Tanakh. See this? Hebrew Bible, which has the Hebrew on one side and the translation on the other, and they read it right to left. And then this has the New Testament in it, but it starts, because they read right to left, it's like all backwards, so I have to get used to this whole thing. So anyways, Paul is talking about, he says, do not be deceived, evil company corrupts good habits, awake to righteousness and do not sin. For some do not have the knowledge of God, and I speak this to your shame. He's talking about the context of the resurrection, how the dead are raised up. He's in this whole discussion, but he says, but God gives it a body as he pleases, and to each seed its own body. Now, if you remember in Genesis, everything was made and was to reproduce after its kind. You can't reproduce unless you have a seed, because in the seed is all the genetic code for reproducing. So, I mean, it's like one has to follow the other. Now, he says in verse 39, all flesh is not the same flesh. Now, I hope I'm beginning to pique your curiosity, but it's like, wow, looking at this in a whole new light. Not all flesh is the same flesh. What is Paul telling us? But there is one kind of flesh of men. Boom. There is another kind of flesh of animals. Boom. What is he talking? And there is another kind of flesh of fish and another kind of flesh of birds. So right there, we got flesh being grouped together with all of these other things, the flesh of animals and birds. Okay, then there are also, because that's not where we got to end here, there are also celestial bodies. Celestial refers to heavenly things, celestial. And there are terrestrial bodies, meaning things on the earth. Terrestrial, terra firma, things on the ground. But the glory of the celestial is one. So here we're in a whole new realm of physics here with glory we're talking about. We're not talking about flesh now. We're talking about glory, which is main attribute. Like in the beasts, the things, their main attribute is flesh. They got flesh. If you're celestial, you got light. Am I making myself clear here? But the glory is light. Anybody knows that? The glory, it's light. Okay? There is one glory of the sun, brightness, shining, light. These things all, and another glory of the moon, and another glory of the stars. So it's another way of saying, like he was saying, now there's one kind of flesh for animals. There's one kind of flesh for birds, there's another kind of flesh from fish. Well, also when you're talking about the celestial realms, this is what he's saying, because, and I don't want to get, and I'm not going to cover this tonight, but I want you to hear these. I want you to see. I want you to begin to like ask questions. God, I never saw that. Oh my gosh, what is it? What is hidden in here? So there is one glory of the sun, which is like saying there's one flesh, but this is, we're in the celestial realm. Another glory of the moon, another glory of the stars, and one star differs from another star in glory. So, okay, I just have to throw that out there. So it is all over the place. We can't, keep hiding our head in the sand and pretending it's not there, because it is there. Now this is where it gets even more a little bit exciting. Well, to me anyways, this is great stuff. So why, let's go back to Peter. And now God is really telling him something, because this is probably the hugest thing that happened in the book of Acts. This is the beginning of the door being blown wide open again, okay? Let me just give you this little history lesson quick. From Adam to Abraham, there was no nation of Israel, okay? It was just people groups, okay? And in that people groups, there was a righteous remnant, which came down through Adam, through his sons, through Enoch and Noah, and you get down to Shem. They're passing on a birthright. They're passing on books and texts. I keep writing. It's all over, and how Isaac gave them to Jacob. Well, Abraham gave them to Isaac, and Isaac gave them to Jacob, and Jacob gave them to Levi, okay, who then started the priesthood, the Levitical priesthood, okay? So there's just so much, people. But my point is, here's Peter, who now, so the history is, so you had a whole time where there was no nation of Israel, but God was still working with the nations. They had the Noahide laws. I mean, there's just so much here. But there was this righteous family, this righteous bloodline, Shem. And we do have, because we're going to a place called the war of the seed lines. There's two bloodlines. This different kind of flesh, this comes into play in here. What in the world has been going on? Everything's going to come out in the open, everything's going to get unpacked. Then from Abraham, God's changed it up a bit. And between Abraham and Jacob, because I've said this, because we're in a war, he sort of, he began calling out this huge group of people. Jacob had the 12 sons, and as they started to multiply and everything, by the time you get to Moses in this thing, which is where God wanted to go, he called out like a whole nation. He birthed a nation of people in a day on Mount Sinai. I mean, that's what he did. He explained to them the terms. It was a marriage contract. They agreed. They said, okay, you'll be our Elohim, and we will be your people, and we're good to go. We're going to obey you. We're going to follow you. We're going to do this thing. We are going to be the priests. Instead of one priestly line, this is when the priest Melchizedek, who was Shem, that way God was working the priesthood, stopped, boom. He started a new thing and a priesthood thing with Levi, with the Levites, with Moses, with this whole new thing of the temple kind of work, until you get up to the time of Jesus. And again, Jesus put an end to the Levitical priesthood and to its need for sacrifice and offerings. Then, boom, you go from Jesus to where we are. Jesus was in the order of the priesthood again of Melchizedek. He picked it back up again. And that priesthood is going forward. We're of that priesthood, okay? We're not Levites. We're the priesthood now. We're kings and priests of Melchizedek. And then into the millennial reign, we will be priests of God, the elect, the called, the chosen, will be priests of God again with the Lord in the new temple, and that's another whole kind of pseudo understanding. Okay, so I want you to understand how this thing does change up.